They say you can't make the same mistake twice. And they also say you can take a girl out of the village. But it's hard to take the village out of the girl. Candace was about to put both sayings to the test. Returning to her hometown of Griffith Town was never in Candace's plans. She hoped it would never happen. Candace dreamed of shedding every last trace of her small town upbringing. At 16, she moved to the city, enrolled in university, all on her own. She excelled academically, sacrificing sleep during exam periods. Anything to avoid being expelled. Anything to avoid going back to the suffocating Griffith Town, where there seemed to be no prospects or opportunities. She dressed like a city girl, or at least tried to. Looking back, Candace finds it amusing. Nonetheless, returning to the village felt like a punishment from the heavens. But against all odds, she succeeded. She graduated from university, became an engineer, just as she had dreamed. She landed a job at her dream company, Trasbridge. She was involved in bridge design, just as she had hoped. The pay was good, the prospects were promising, and then some. Work for 5 or 6 years, impress the higher-ups, and it's a straight path to the company's main branch in New York. Candace dreamed of living in a big city, often imagining her future life. These fantasies were largely fueled by her favorite TV shows. Candace was certain that, like the heroines, she would buy expensive clothes and shoes, spend her free time in bars and cafes. The image of a young woman rushing to work with a cup of coffee haunted her. She wanted to be just like that. Beautiful, mysterious, undeniably fashionable and stylish. She even started a vision board, sticking photos cut out from fashion magazines onto it. And as expected, she looked at them every morning and evening. Candace fervently believed it would help, but Candace never made it to New York. No matter how hard she tried. She took on all sorts of tasks from her superiors, stayed late at work, didn't even rest on weekends, just to finish endless drawings and calculations. She believed it would convey a simple message to her superiors. Candace is one of the best workers, and she deserves a promotion. But for some reason, her efforts yielded no results. Only more tasks piled up, and her salary remained as small as ever. Once, Candace complained about this to her colleague, Bruna. Bruna had been with Trasbridge for a long time, about 10 years, holding the position of deputy department head. "Candace, are you naive or something?" Bruna chuckled. "Don't you understand how this world works?" "Why naive?" Candace felt offended. "Isn't it supposed to be like that? Whoever works hard and diligently should climb the career ladder." "No, Candace, that's not how it works. You're convenient. You work a lot and ask for little. Why promote you, and how so?" Candace was surprised. "What should I do?" "Well, there are plenty of options." Bruna winked. "Sleeping with the boss, for example, with Mr. Keaton. He's already 60, and he's married." Candace laughed. "So what? Do you think that's how she became his deputy?" Bruna shrugged indifferently. "That's how, Candace. Men don't care how old they are, and they forget about their wives when they see a pretty face and long legs. It's just that this option isn't suitable for you. Wrong type." "Why is that?" Candace felt offended again. Could she not seduce her boss anymore? No, of course, she wouldn't do that. But Bruna's words hit a nerve. "Why is it okay for some and not for others?" "You're a good girl," Bruna explained. "Forgive me for saying so, but you're a good, proper girl. A workhorse. They trust complicated tasks to people like you, but bosses don't get involved romantically with them. Are you upset? Oh, come on. Or did you have your eye on Mr. Keaton?" "Ha!" Candace burst out laughing. "No, I didn't. I just wanted to transfer to New York." "Well, maybe in 15 years they'll transfer you." Bruna shrugged. "Meanwhile, they're transferring Leighton Brody." "But she..." "Wait. She just got hired, and I'm redoing all her work." Candace almost cried from frustration. Why? Because she's the daughter of an old friend of Mr. Keaton, Bruner explained. And he can't refuse her. So either wait or forget about such nonsense. That's how this world works. Candace couldn't shake off her conversation with Bruner for a long time. She even shed a few tears when she got home. She truly felt terribly naive, unable to grasp the obvious. Eva got her position for her looks. Leighton was headed to the big city just because she was born into the right family. And there was Candace, just a regular girl from Griffith Town. A workhorse. Nothing more. New York wasn't in the cards for her. She'd spend her whole life in her drafting department. Until retirement. Maybe she'd get to see New York on a business trip if she was lucky. Candace resigned herself to it. Well, Bruner was right. Some people had to settle for less. Candace had already achieved decent results. Her mom worked as a simple dairy farmer, and her dad left the family when she was barely 4 years old. Yet she managed to attend college after high school. And she stayed in the city, never returning to Griffith Town, just as she had dreamed. True, Candace lived in a rented apartment. But who knows, maybe she'd be able to save up for her own place. She did have an apartment in Griffith Town, in an old apartment building, left to her by her grandfather. Candace wanted to sell it, but who would buy it? There weren't many people eager to live in Griffith Town. And if someone did buy it, it would be for a cheap price. So the apartment sat idle, just in case. And then she met Barry, her future husband. Candace knew right away that Barry would be her husband. She used to not believe in intuition, let alone love at first sight. But when Barry showed up in their department, it was like a lightning bolt struck her. Yes, him. Smart, handsome, with a great sense of humor. He was a couple of years younger than Candace, but that didn't bother her. Apparently, Barry felt something too because he started showing Candace attention from the first days. Then he told her that when he first met her, he felt the desire to start a family. Candace just laughed at his words. She was just ordinary, nothing special. And he played the guitar, went hiking, and read thick books about fictional worlds, wizards, and dragons. But Barry insisted that he never saw Candace as ordinary. You're exactly what I need. Calm but with a sense of humor. Beautiful but not flashy. Smart but not pretentious. The perfect balance in everything, he often said. They got married a year later. Candace developed a liking for hiking and books about fictional worlds. It was important to her to have something to talk about with her husband. Not just work. Barry appreciated her efforts and supported her in every way. He even suggested she learn to play the guitar so they could sing together by the campfire songs from the 60s, which Barry simply adored. Candace never did learn to play the guitar. She didn't have the time. Now she had to juggle not only work, which hadn't decreased, but also the household. But they lived together with Barry's mom, Patricia. Patricia didn't warm up to Candace. No, she wasn't the classic mother-in-law who wouldn't accept any daughter-in-law. There were no scandals. No reproaches about Candace not taking care of Barry properly either. But Patricia was so cold towards Candace that she always felt awkward in her presence. Patricia was particularly displeased with the fact that Candace came from the village, a daughter of a dairy farmer. What a mismatch. Patricia herself was an engineer, just like her late husband. And her father was an engineer, and his father before him. And here, Candace overheard Patricia's conversation with her friend on the phone one day. Well, I didn't object, Patricia complained. But, with such a pedigree, you can't ever turn a girl from the village into a city girl. I don't even pretend to. But habits, customs, you can't shake those. I worry about how she'll raise the kids. Candace never quite understood what habits and customs Patricia was talking about. She didn't blow her nose in the curtains, didn't spit on the floor through her teeth, and didn't try to start breeding chickens or sheep on the balcony. It wasn't until later that Candace realized Patricia simply needed to feel superior to her daughter-in-law. It was nice to think of Candace as a country bumpkin who somehow found herself in their educated family. Realizing this simple truth, Candace felt a bit more at ease. They just had to endure a bit longer, and then they would buy their own apartment. And Patricia, with her haughty expression and pursed lips, would only see Candace on holidays. But they never did buy that apartment. A year after the wedding, Patricia had a stroke. She became a vegetable, couldn't work or talk. All their savings went into her treatment. Barry was desperate. He even turned to healers. Healers came to the apartment, muttered something over Patricia, waved bundles of herbs over her, and sprayed murky water from a bottle. But it didn't work, which didn't really surprise Candace. Doctors didn't say anything definite. Would Patricia get back on her feet soon? Or maybe never? Believe in miracles. Wait, they said. Candace had to leave her job. Someone had to take care of Patricia. Darling, it's just for a few months. Her husband said, I'll ask for a raise. We'll have more money. We'll find a caregiver for Mom. Candace agreed. She had to support her husband, be his backbone and support, especially in such a situation. But caregivers were too expensive. They couldn't afford it. Candace quickly learned the caregiver profession. She had to monitor Patricia's vitals, feed her spoonful by spoonful, give her injections a couple of times a day. At first, it wasn't easy for Candace. She missed her work, felt like a shut-in. The only thing that helped her was the thought that it was all temporary. She just had to endure a little longer, and Barry would come up with something. He was so smart, so talented. Plus, his bosses held him in high regard. 6 months passed. Then a year. Nothing changed. Barry went to work, came home late in the evening, spent a little time with his mother, then went to bed after eating the dinner Candace prepared. He repeated that they just had to endure a bit longer, just a little bit more. They had already promised that he would get a promotion next year, and his salary would be much higher, just enough to afford a caregiver. And Candace could go back to work again. You're amazing. I'm so glad I can rely on you, he would tell her. I'm proud of you, Candace. Those words inspired Candace. Yes, it was tough for now, but her husband would surely appreciate her efforts and love her even more, because he couldn't possibly not understand the sacrifices she was making for him. But Barry didn't appreciate the sacrifice. His mother, Patricia, passed away 7 years after her stroke. Candace organized the funeral. Barry couldn't gather himself. He was too devastated by his mother's death. Candace pitied him and completely took over the arrangements. And then, a month later, he suddenly announced that they should break up. How's that? Well, Barry hesitated. I met someone else and I don't want to deceive you. Long ago, she asked quietly. 3 years ago. On a hiking trip, Barry admitted. Candace remembered. Yes, 3 years ago, in the summer, he went on another hiking trip. Of course, he didn't take Candace with him because someone had to stay with Patricia. Candace let her husband go. After all, he needed a break. He suffered because of his mother and worked a lot. After all, he was the sole breadwinner. Candace never even thought that Barry might have an affair on the side. So, you've decided to leave, she frowned. Now, when I'm no longer needed. But that's not it, Barry exclaimed. Do you think I used you? I've been thinking a lot, trying to figure myself out. And after my mom, after what happened to her, I realized that life is short, and I don't want to ruin yours. First of all, you'll find someone who will truly love you. How noble, Candace muttered. And what's next? Well, what's next? The jointly acquired property doesn't include the apartment, Barry said. So, I'm supposed to pack up and leave. The woman continued his thought. And not interfere with you building a new happiness, right? You've got it all wrong, Candace. Barry looked at her with an innocent gaze. What did you expect? We can't continue living together, now that you no longer need a free caregiver. Candace yelled. You know what? I'm just an honest person." Barry cut her off. "I needed time to make a decision." Candace didn't bother to ask why Barry made the decision now, when his mother was gone. Well, at least he didn't ask her to help with renovations, only to bring his new sweetheart into a finished home. That same evening, she left home. She had a little money, which she had been saving on her own card from the funds her husband allocated for household expenses. Candace spent the night in a cheap hotel in a cramped, single room. She didn't sleep. She was thinking about what to do next. Get a job. After such a long break in her career, she was unlikely to find a good position and a high salary. And she had forgotten everything during those 7 years of taking care of a bedridden patient. Candace was unbearably hurt by her husband's betrayal. No, there were no agonizing reflections on his part. He just waited for his mother to die so he could start building a new life. He knew everything and planned it all in advance. After all, you don't bring a new spouse to Patricia's deathbed. Although it would have been amusing, Candace blamed herself. How foolish she was. She relieved Barry of all responsibilities, gave him the opportunity to relax, go on his favorite hikes, socialize, while she was stuck within 4 walls. And what did he see when he came back? Candace in a faded t-shirt and dirty, stretched out sweatpants, with a bun on her head. She didn't take care of herself or dress up. Why bother when no one sees her? And her husband, as she thought, should just accept her as she is. He didn't owe anyone anything. She realized. It all turned out great. No job, no family, no apartment. If Candace from today told her former self many years ago, that naive Candace, who glued pictures of expensive perfumes and business jets onto her vision board, she would never have believed it. And how much time was wasted. She nearly went crazy sitting at home. She had only one outlet. At some point, Candace started writing by hand in thick notebooks she bought at the nearest supermarket. At first, she wrote down her schedule for the day, then some memories, thoughts, and then she wrote a story, and then another one. In her stories, strong heroines bravely overcame various obstacles. They charmed handsome, wealthy men, investigated crimes, and even toppled government coups. As for Candace herself, after finishing writing, she went to wash the sheets or cook steamed vegetables for Patricia. She had accumulated 15 notebooks, completely filled. She remembered her hobby and bitterly smiled. And who needed all this? Nobody. With these notebooks, one could only start a fire in the village. In the village, Candace remembered Griffith Town. The river, the abandoned church, the mansion converted into a hospital, several multi-story buildings, one of which housed her apartment, and tiny houses, one of which her mother lived in. Mom. Candace felt a deep longing. They rarely saw each other in recent years. A couple of times a year at most. Candace realized she wanted to go home, at least for a while, to regain strength, to recover, to walk through the forest she knew since childhood, and to swim in the river. All right, home it is. Decision made. A couple of months, and she'll be able to come back here, to the city, with renewed strength and a desire to live. Because for some reason, that desire has vanished. When Patricia was sick, Candace often imagined what she would do once she was free from her duties. She wanted to go to the sea with her husband, wanted to completely change her wardrobe, toss out the worn-out clothes, and buy all new ones. And she also dreamed of going to a hair salon, not just any salon, but an expensive one where they would transform her silly bun into an elegant hairstyle. But Barry decided otherwise. 7 years of Candace's life were wasted. No, not wasted. She wasted them herself. She threw them away for someone who wasn't worth it. Even if he played the guitar wonderfully, sang, and read books about brave warriors and beautiful princesses. Barry now has his princess, and the servant can return to her native village, and she can be safely forgotten. After all, in her husband's life, Candace is just a secondary character, and readers only pity secondary characters when they die, and even then, not for long. Candace fell asleep in tears, and in the morning, she called her mother and said she would be coming soon. For long? Her mother asked. I don't know. Candace replied. I see, sighed the woman. I'll be waiting for you. I'll bake your favorite pie. Suddenly, Candace desperately wanted her mother's pie. She sniffled and hung up the phone. From the hotel, she went to collect her things. Barry was at work, which pleased Candace. She didn't want to talk to him or even see him. There weren't many things, at least not what she wanted to take with her. A couple of shirts, jeans, a few t-shirts, her favorite shampoo. Candace almost forgot her notebooks with stories. She wanted to throw them away, but after thinking for a while, she decided to put them in her suitcase. Let them be. After all, so much time was spent on them. Thinking about wasted time was both sad and funny at the same time. As a final touch, Candace left a note for her soon-to-be ex-husband. Something like, "We'll settle the divorce later. I'll call you in a week." She left the note on the mirror. She wanted to leave a lipstick mark on the note, as a small farewell prank. But she changed her mind, and she didn't have any lipstick anyway. But surely, Barry's new girlfriend has lipstick. Definitely, she's a princess. After all, Candace pushed that thought away and firmly closed the door. She probably won't return to this apartment again. At the bus stop, Candace boarded a bus and headed to the train station. In 3 hours, she would be in Griffith Town, seeing her mother, eating pie, and going to sleep. And she'll sleep for a whole eternity. And now she's on the train, absolutely clueless about what to do next. Candace bought some women's magazine at the station to pass the time. Cooking tips, fashion, parenting advice, something from the lives of normal people. Women whom their husbands didn't abandon after dedicating years of their lives to caring for their sick mother. Candace wanted to cry. That's how her life was supposed to be, and she believed it would be. Once upon a time, she believed. Now what? She's already 30. If it weren't for Patricia's illness, she might have been a mother by now, living in her own apartment, and Barry wouldn't have left her for someone else. Candace wiped away a tear. Candace, is that you? A plump young woman in a flowery sundress sat down next to Candace. Candace didn't recognize the woman. It's me. She nodded. What? You didn't recognize me? The woman laughed loudly and slapped her on the shoulder. Well, try to remember. Candace looked closely at her interlocutor. A pleasant face, a friendly smile, long raven-colored hair, dark brown, almost black eyes. Veronica, exclaimed Candace. Yes, it's me. Veronica nodded. And here I thought you wouldn't remember me. Yes, I've gained weight, of course, but not to the extent that you wouldn't recognize me. Right. Candace couldn't help but smile. Candace and Veronica were classmates. Candace was diligent, always getting straight A's. Veronica, on the other hand, was a troublemaker, constantly skipping classes, and even smoking behind the school. Starting from the 9th grade, she started wearing short skirts, which earned her a lot of reprimands from the teachers, and Veronica wore bright, flashy makeup. Boys chased after her, but she just shrugged them off. Such beauty won't be yours, for sure. Veronica's mom was constantly called to school, but it had no effect. Her name was Stephania. It seems she wore even brighter makeup than her daughter. She would come, deliberately smoke on the school porch, and march to the principal's office, gathering admiring glances from the high schoolers. Naturally, those conversations didn't lead to anything. She promised to talk to her daughter, but nothing changed. Candace even thought that mother and daughter shared the same wardrobe, and they weren't going to change it under any circumstances. It was rumored that Stephania was a real gypsy who ran away to marry a local guy. But the marriage never happened. Her lover left her, and she gave birth to Veronica, settling in Griffith Town, where she worked as a cleaner on a local farm. Where a cleaner got the money for such revealing outfits and cosmetics. No one knew. People in the village were afraid of her. They didn't quarrel with her, but they didn't socialize much either, which suited the woman just fine. After school, Veronica went to New York. Candace thought her decision was foolish. First, what would she do there without a proper education? Second, everyone knows what happens to provincial fools who decide to conquer the big city at 18. Candace considered herself smarter, but apparently she was wrong, because now they met on this train taking them both to Griffith Town, back to where their journey began. Thank goodness. Veronica shook her head. Have I aged so much? No. I just didn't recognize you right away. Candace smiled. Sorry, it's been a while since we last saw each other. True. Veronica adjusted the strap of her dress slipping off her shoulder. How have you been? They say you finished university, got married. Now visiting your mother. Ha, finished university, got married. Candace sighed. But she hesitated. She didn't want to tell Veronica what happened. It was embarrassing. Did he turn out to be a jerk? Veronica sympathetically asked. Candace nodded. Yeah. I took care of his paralyzed mother for 7 years. Didn't work. And him. He found someone else. While hiking. Oh, women. Veronica sighed. So, you read advice on how to be a wise woman. Ha. Like, a man shouldn't take care of the sick. He should focus on his career. And you, just be a good housewife. Right. And Candace sadly nodded. Well, it's still hard to see Mom like that. Veronica remarked. Was it easy for you then? Veronica crossed her arms over her chest. Do you want me to curse him? My mom taught me how. No need. Candace was alarmed. I'm kidding. Veronica laughed. Did you believe me? Although if I could, I'd curse many men. So, you're going to heal your wounds after all. It seems so. Candace replied grimly. I am too. To be honest. Veronica suddenly confessed. Candace looked at her surprised. Veronica didn't seem like someone whose heart was broken. Yeah. She spread her hands wide, her wrists jingling with delicate golden bracelets. I got involved with this guy. He said he was an honest businessman. But it turned out, and what happened? Candace asked quietly. A fuck. Veronica replied. I didn't know until some weird guys caught me on the street. What? Candace's eyes widened. Yeah. Don't shout. Veronica glanced around fearfully. Nothing special. They wanted to steal from me to get some money back from him. But you can't steal from me, you know. I hit one between the legs, sprayed the other in the face with pepper spray. Then I ran away from them. Well, Candace's eyes widened. So, you escaped. Veronica nodded proudly in response. Of course, they thought I was the kind of person you could scare like that. Right. No way. So I came home, asked my boyfriend straight up what was going on, and he confessed. What did I need that for? I didn't need that, Veronica declared. Yeah, of course, you didn't. Candace agreed. Exactly, Veronica said, fidgeting with her bracelets. So I told him I was leaving. And I left. If he wants me back, he can ask for forgiveness. Will you go back? Candace asked. I'll think about it. Veronica grumbled. Ah, and such a man. He used to take me to restaurants, promised to buy me a real fur coat. And I was foolish enough to believe him. Who doesn't want a fur coat? Ha! Candace didn't respond. The desire to own a fur coat was never something she understood. What was the point of putting such a strain on the family budget? It would be better to buy something useful. Something as useful as herself. Not a woman, but a dishwasher with a built-in vacuum cleaner. After these thoughts, Candace felt sad again. She had been used, and then simply thrown away like garbage. No kids? Veronica asked, pulling Candace out of her dark thoughts. No, Candace sighed. And that's good. You'll have more. Veronica smirked. From a decent man, not your scoundrel. And you're going to your mom's. Candace decided to change the subject. No. Mom went away. Veronica proudly smiled. To Australia. Well, exclaimed Candace. For work. She got married. Veronica said, pulling out her phone from her purse. Look at her. She's changed. Found herself a man. He took her with him. And off she went. And Veronica thrust her smartphone screen into Candace's face. The photo showed Stefania, almost unchanged after 15 years, wearing a hat and a checkered shirt. A bald man with a charming smile hugged her from behind. Well, that's great. Candace sincerely rejoiced. And my mom still lives in Griffithtown. We're all going to live in Griffithtown now. Veronica sighed. But what can we do, friend? The main thing is not to lose heart. Time flew by unnoticed as Candace and Veronica reminisced about former classmates and teachers. Some stayed in Griffithtown. Some left. And some just died. Candace felt sad again. How quickly time flies. And there was no going back to where she was a naive girl dreaming of living in New York. Going to work in an elegant coat and fashionable dress. And sipping coffee from a paper cup on the way. Damn that cup from her fantasies. The women stepped off at the right station. Neither Candace nor Veronica was met by anyone. Are you going to live with your mom? Veronica asked. Yeah, nodded her former classmate. And you? The apartment is still my mom's. She kept it for me. Probably felt it might come in handy. Veronica laughed. So, Candace, we'll be visiting each other. It's good I ran into you. I don't feel like such a failure now, compared to me. Huh? Candace felt offended. What's that? Veronica innocently smiled. Isn't it easier for two failures to survive together? Maybe we'll get closer after all. We hardly talked in school. They walked slowly along the road leading to Griffithtown. There was the childhood familiar abandoned church. It seemed like it was built almost in the 18th century. At least that's what they said. Once the building majestically towered over the wheat fields. Now only the walls remained. In her childhood, Candace used to run here with friends. Of course, her mom strictly forbade her from doing so. She said the walls could collapse right onto the heads of playing children. But there's nothing sweeter than forbidden fruit. Candace remembered the sweet feeling of fear that arose when she walked through the peeling gates. How scary and strange it smelled of dampness and mold here. It seemed like a misty clot would fly by any moment and engulf her in icy wind, making her hair stand on end and blood freeze in her veins. But Candace never saw any ghosts, although one time Clover, the local crazy woman, scared her badly. It seemed she lived somewhere in a shack in the woods. Legends about her circulated in Griffithtown. Apparently, she had some sad story in her life. Her whole family perished. That's why she went mad. She went to live in the forest, away from people, and only occasionally emerged to scare children playing in the church or passers-by on the deserted road. Candace was 10 then, and she and her classmate Michael decided to spend the evening in the church, just to give themselves a scare. They often went there, telling scary stories about the pitch-black hand, the coffin on wheels. Such stories could only be told like this, in twilight, in an abandoned building, with faces lit up by a pocket flashlight. They sat on the trunk of a fallen tree, which local teenagers dragged into the church. Candace was crafting another story, and then a hand reached out from the mirror and grabbed the girl. She whispered hoarsely, relishing the effect it had on Michael. He was terribly impressionable. He couldn't tell scary stories himself, but scaring him was a pleasure. Pale, mouth slightly open, eyes gleaming. And what happened with the girl? Michael asked. Suddenly, a howl rang out near the church. Thin, plaintive, resembling the howling of the wind in the branches of a willow tree. But it wasn't the wind. There were no willows nearby, and there was no wind today. What's that? Michael grabbed Candace's hand. Wolves, maybe. What wolves? Candace felt her heart beating twice as fast. Someone must be joking. Probably. In reality, Candace felt uneasy. Maybe it really was wolves. Or the ghost of a dead nun. They said a nun was killed in this church once, and sometimes she returned to mourn her untimely death. Who jokes like that? Michael curled up into a ball. Candace, go see what's there. And me, the girl protested. You're a boy, I'm scared. Michael admitted. You're braver. This disarmed Candace. After all, Michael was indeed a pretty strange guy. Usually boys never admit to being scared. And this one, fine. Candace sighed. Then stay here. The girl slowly got off the log they were sitting on. Something cracked under her foot, and Candace froze, trying not to breathe. But there wasn't much point to it. Michael was audibly wheezing in fear. Candace remembered he had asthma. She hoped he wouldn't start suffocating. She looked at Michael, pressed a finger to her lips, and slowly headed towards the exit. The boy covered his mouth with his hand and, apparently, held his breath because the wheezing suddenly stopped. The howl echoed again. Candace felt like its source was closer now. Mentally, she promised herself she would never go to the church again. At least not in the evening. Or maybe not at all. If, of course, she survived. Just in case, Candace picked up a stick from the floor. Step. Another step. She cautiously peeked into the yard and saw a dark figure approaching the church along the children's beaten path. Candace screamed and dropped her stick. Michael ran up behind her. Get out of here. Leave. The ghost demanded in a creaky voice. Leave, heathens. Thieves. The moon peeked out from behind the clouds. Candace managed to make out the ghost's face. A hooked long nose almost to the chin. A tiny lower jaw. A huge wart on the forehead. The ghost spread its arms. Get out of here. Candace looked at Michael. Let's go through the second entrance. He understood her immediately. There was another exit in the church. One wall had partially collapsed, creating a gap big enough to squeeze through. And Michael dashed for the gap. Candace ran after him. What happened next? She didn't remember. They ran so fast that it felt like her heart was about to stop, and Candace tasted a strange metallic taste in her mouth. She thought her lungs had burst, and she would drop dead any moment. But they survived and ran to the house where Candace lived with her mother. Her mom came out at the noise. What happened? She asked in surprise. Wolves, perhaps. There. Candace sobbed. A ghost. In the church. It chased us. An old woman. Candace collapsed into her mother's arms and burst into tears. Michael stood awkwardly in the corner, picking at the floor with the toe of his old sneaker. Mom patted Candace's head. I told you not to go there, didn't I? She asked sternly. Candace nodded. There are no ghosts. Kids. Sighed her mom. Probably. It was Clover who came to you. She often comes out of the woods and scares people. Who's Clover? Michael asked, surprised. Is she a ghost? Candace's mom laughed and hugged her daughter tighter. No, she's just crazy. She won't hurt you, but she'll scare you. Her life was tough. That's why she lost her mind. And you, dears, go have some tea and calm down. Michael, do your parents know where you are? I told them I went to Duke's for a visit. The boy blushed. Oh, they still don't know anything. But they've learned to lie to their parents. Sighed Mom. Candace, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And you, Michael, go straight home after tea. I'll work you if you're scared. Michael didn't say anything in response. But Candace understood that she would still have to escort her friend, even though he lived 3 houses away. Clover haunted Candace in her nightmares for a long time. Do you think Clover died? Candace asked Veronica as they walked past the church. Who knows? Veronica looked thoughtfully at the almost completely ruined walls. People like her live a long time. Candace, maybe she's still wandering around. Or maybe they caught her and took her to a hospital, for example. We should ask the locals. Halfway to Griffith Town, they met Candace's mom, who came to meet her daughter off the train. Hello, Renee. Veronica smiled. Oh, and you're here too, Veronica. Renee nodded to Veronica, then hugged her daughter. I'm glad you're here, my girls. Candace, why do you look sad? Is something bothering you? I'm happy with everything. Candace squeaked. She just didn't want to burst into tears. Especially not in front of her mom. Okay, we'll talk at home. Renee sighed. Are you staying with us for long? Maybe you'll come in for some tea. I baked a pie. The years she spent with Barry suddenly seemed like an illusion to Candace. A dream she would forget in a few days. But here was the present. The road from the station to Griffith Town. Her mom. The special scent of the summer fields. Familiar since childhood. Unmistakable. Oh, forget about Barry. Candace would definitely be happy. No matter what. They reached Renee's house without haste. The woman set the table. Veronica dove for the pie. Candace didn't feel like eating. She just savored the feeling of having a home where she would definitely not be kicked out from. She leisurely drank tea with lemon balm leaves and listened to her mom's voice. Candace, did I tell you about Michael? Renee asked. No, you didn't. Candace replied to her mother. What about him? He's back, writing a book about Griffith Town. Renee smiled. He's our local history man or something. Can't remember. A historian. Huh? Veronica asked. Yes, exactly. He's wandering around, taking photos of things. He's become quite respectable. Olive gave birth a month ago. Well, you probably don't remember her. She's about 8 or 9 years younger than you. And also, Candace smiled at her mother. How good it was to be home. And she would definitely meet up with Michael. I wonder if he remembers how they ran away from the crazy Clover. And then had tea in this kitchen and laughed at themselves after finishing her 3rd cup of tea. Veronica sighed. Oh, I really don't want to leave. There's probably cobwebs and dust all over my apartment. I need to clean for a week, then stay. Renee offered her. We have plenty of space. I can put you in the small room or in the living room. You'll spend the night, and tomorrow we'll go to your place together and clean up. Really? Veronica beamed. Are you sure it's not too much trouble? No, it's not too much trouble. Renee patted Candace on the head, just as she used to do when her daughter was very little. Could I leave a child without help? And you are like children to me. Candace took her mom's hand and pressed her palm against her cheek. Home was good. They could help here. But what about in the city? The only close person in the city, her husband. Turned out he not to need her. Veronica took a shower and went to bed, complaining to the hostess about her terrible fatigue. Candace and her mom sat in the kitchen for a long time. Candace explained why she left her husband. Renee gasped, clutched her heart, and sighed heavily. Forget about him, dear, she said when Candace finished her story. He'll come crawling back to you. They always do. A man should be a rock, sticking to his decisions. But yours keeps changing his mind. Where do you find such rocks, Mom? Candace laughed. Your metaphors are beautiful. But it's not clear how to use that wisdom. Renee looked at her daughter with playful severity. Candace, figure it out for yourself. You're beautiful, my dear. You'll find someone better. What's his name? The oligarch. Candace desperately wanted to sleep. Mom, you can't imagine how much I love you. The next day, Candace went to Veronica's to help with the cleaning. There was a lot of work to do, and they labored until late in the evening. Well, you can live here now, Veronica finally declared. Oh, my back hurts now. It's a bit poor here, of course, but still, I'll repeat. You can live here. The setting indeed left much to be desired. Old furniture, a huge bulky wardrobe, faded wallpaper. But Veronica hoped she wouldn't have to live in Griffith Town for long. At most, a month. We had a fresh renovation. Everything's just as I like it. I picked the design myself. Veronica sighed. Andy said, do what you want. I'll give you the money. And he did. But did your man give you money? He gave me money for household expenses, Candace replied. The dust gave her a terrible headache, and Candace wanted to go outside for a walk in the fresh air for household expenses. Veronica mocked her. "Girl, why did you even marry for that? He used you, and you were happy about it." "I wasn't happy." Candace ran her hand through her hair. It felt like the dust had settled in them too. In her eyes, in her nose. There was no escaping it. "Listen, Veronica, let's go to the river and swim." "Sure." Veronica nodded. "I wonder what Indy's doing there. I'm really worried. They might kill him. It'll be a pity. He's actually a good man, just a bit dense." Candace didn't have a swimsuit. She only realized it now when she suggested going to the river. She and Barry never went to the beach, never went to the sea, just talked about it. When would they ever get the chance? Naturally, by chance, Candace meant the end of her mother-in-law's earthly journey. But now it seemed Barry would be going to the sea with someone else. Fortunately, Stephanie had a swimsuit in her closet that was almost Candace's size. "It's just a bit loose around the bust," Veronica remarked. "Your bust area isn't very developed, I must say." "Well, it is what it is." Candace ran her hand over her chest. "At least it's not a hindrance." "Yeah, but it's not much help either." Veronica showed off her décolletage. "I caught Andy's eye with this bust. I wore a low-cut dress at the restaurant. I think he didn't notice my face for the first 2 weeks." Veronica indeed had a magnificent bust. Candace was even a bit envious. But neither of them had much luck in life. So, it seemed, it wasn't about the bust. They stepped out of the house. The weather was pleasant. The sun was still shining, but it was starting to cool down in the evening. They walked along the road leading to the river, chatting about something. "I'm curious to see Michael," Veronica said. "Remember how much of a geek he was? Almost like you. And now, he's become a scientist, a local historian. That's what scientists do, right?" "Well, maybe." Candace hesitated. "He was collecting something about the history of Griffith Town back in school. Do you know it was named after a merchant? His surname was Griffith. His mansion was in the hospital building. Then, in the Revolution, the merchant's descendants disappeared somewhere. And did they live in that hospital? Well, it was almost demolished in the 20s, I think. Then it was rebuilt, and now it's a hospital." Candace shrugged. "But there are still some huge basements there, I heard." Michael wanted to explore them but was afraid of getting caught. They reached the river and settled on the bank, in the shade of a willow tree. "It's nice in the village in the summer," Veronica said. "Although it's even better at the sea. Andy took me to Dubai once. I want to live there. Luxury everywhere. And everyone's beautiful. All cool." "Yeah, it's not bad here either." Candace got up from the towel and looked around. There was no crowd at the river, which pleased her. Candace felt a bit self-conscious about her figure. She hadn't had time for sports, so she had a little belly, and her hips had filled out. She needed to go on a diet. But then again, what diet could she follow with her mom's pies? "Well, I'd still choose Dubai." Veronica stretched out on the towel and blissfully closed her eyes. It's too quiet here. You get it. But there's action there. Here, nothing happens. I don't know. I like it here." Candace shrugged. "Veronica, I'm going for a swim." The water was warm. Candace waded in up to her knees, then up to her waist. She was one of those who didn't know how to dive. It took her some time to get used to the water, and yet, it was beautiful here. Willows, birdsong, a sunlit path on the water. Candace realized she had forgotten how beautiful the world could be. And once again, she felt a surge of anger. Barry was living his normal life, while he had walled her up in the apartment with his sick mother. Couldn't he at least offer some moral compensation or present him with a bill for services rendered? Find out how much the caregiver earns per day and demand money from him. Probably enough for a trip to Dubai. And there would still be some left over. Something dark caught Candace's attention. Something resembling a log washed up on the shore. Nothing special. just driftwood and reeds. But something about it didn't sit right with Candace. A chill ran down her spine. She took a step towards the log. The water suddenly seemed icy. The birds seemed to fall silent. Or was it that Candace's hearing suddenly failed her? Could a log have a face with a huge wart on its forehead, and thin, bony hands, and a long nose, almost to the chin? Candace realized what she was seeing and screamed. What happened next? The woman couldn't remember. It seemed Veronica came running, trying to calm her down. Then Veronica noticed what Candace had seen herself, and they were screaming together. It took them at least 5 minutes to calm down. The sight that had greeted them was too horrific. An old woman lay face up in the water. She couldn't be seen from the shore. She was hidden by thick reeds. That's Clover. That crazy one, whispered Candace. Veronica squeezed Candace's hand tightly. What do we do now? We need to call someone, suggested Candace. What else can we do? Maybe she's alive, Veronica asked. We need to check. She's not alive. She's not blinking. Candace trembled with horror. I've never seen dead people before. Okay, you stay. I'll run for help. Veronica glanced at the deceased. Are you okay, Candace? I won't stay. Candace squealed. I don't want to look at her. Don't look. Veronica gently shook Candace by the shoulders. Get to the shore. Wait for me there. Got it. No. Let's go together, Candace pleaded. I'm scared. Let's go. Veronica nodded. But quickly. And let's leave our things behind, or we won't find this place later. I, for one, definitely won't find it. They almost ran to the village. They knocked on the first house they came across. An elderly woman in a kitchen apron opened the door. Hello. There's a dead body in the river, announced Veronica. We need to call the police. The woman gasped. How could this happen? Are you sure? Who died? What horse? Soon, a policeman arrived. He was a man in his 40s. He arrived at the home of Veronica and Candace fairly quickly. At least, that's how it seemed to Candace. She didn't remember him. Tall, 2 meters tall, with dark hair, thin, with huge glasses on his nose. He reminded her more of a writer or poet than a law enforcement officer. I'm Steve Hurl. The policeman introduced himself as he entered the house. Who found the body? We found the body, Veronica replied. We were swimming in the river with my friend. Well, and the body was there. So, the body was swimming there too, right? Muttered Steve. Well, let's go. Let's take a look. Maybe you'll go alone, huh? Candace asked timidly. I don't want to go again. No. Come on. Steve frowned. Maybe you decided to play a joke on me. I don't remember you at all. Came from the city, decided to prank me, and probably filming it yourself. Ha, we're not filming anything, Veronica protested. Then you're just annoying me. Let's go, commanded Steve. On the way, you can tell me where you came from in the first place. We actually lived here, Veronica snapped. Yeah, this is Renee's daughter, Candace, I think. And this is Stephanie's daughter, the homeowner explained to the policeman. Steve, why are you so angry? Steve blushed slightly. Sorry. All right. Let's go, ladies. He decisively headed for the exit. Ladies. Veronica mimicked him. At the river, they quickly found the right spot. She's there, in the reeds. Candace pointed in the right direction. But I'm not going. You go yourselves. Steve looked at Candace incredulously. All right. Just don't try to escape. We won't even try, Veronica promised him. The policeman rolled up his pants, took off his shoes, and waded into the water. So, did you find her? Veronica shouted. Found her, Steve replied. Sorry for doubting you. The following days were restless. Police officers from the city came, interrogated Veronica and Candace. Then, for some reason, they took their fingerprints and photographed their documents. Candace was nervous. Maybe they would decide that they, along with Veronica, had killed Clover for some reason. But fortunately, that didn't happen. The police left them alone. Veronica and Candace were left in peace. A week later, Veronica came to visit Candace early in the morning. She was brewing tea with her mother on the veranda. "Hey." Veronica sat down on an empty chair. "So, any news about Clover?" "Nothing." Candace shrugged. "No one called me again. I wonder who killed her," Veronica said thoughtfully. "Why assume murder right away?" Renee wondered. "Maybe she drowned herself." Drowned?" Veronica chuckled. "Candace, did you even look at the body?" "No. I didn't have time for that," grumbled Candace. "I'm not very fond of examining dead bodies." "Sorry." "Well, her neck was blue. Someone strangled her," Veronica stated. "And there was a bruise on her wrist, as if someone grabbed her. So, she was murdered." "Maybe you just imagined it." Candace shuddered. "Why would someone kill her? Who needs her? She was harmless. Just scared children sometimes. I don't know who needs her, but she was definitely killed." Veronica shook her head. "We should go see that Steve, the unpleasant one, ask what they found there. After all, we have the right. We're witnesses." "Veronica, why do you need all this?" Renee asked her. "Of course, it's sad. But what can we do? She was already quite old." "I'm just curious." Veronica looked intently at Candace. "Will you come?" Candace understood. Her friend were just bored in the village. So they wanted some excitement, to feel like heroines of a detective series. But she doubted it would work out. Everything was too banal. She probably just fell into the water and drowned. And Veronica's bruises were probably just her imagination. "Well, let's go if you're so eager," Candace agreed reluctantly. "But he probably won't tell us anything. He's some nasty, unpleasant guy. You remember, unpleasant?" Veronica nodded. "But we have the right to know. After all, we're taxpayers. What if there's a maniac on the loose, and we're all in danger?" "All right. Let's go." "Mom, where does this policeman live?" "Oh, that's our sheriff." Hee. Renee chuckled. "He lives in the 15th house. And his office? Well, it's right at the hospital, on the ground floor. But he rarely goes to the office. Usually works from home." "Well, Candace, let's go. I can't wait any longer." All right, Candace said reluctantly. In reality, Veronica was terribly curious about what Steve would say. Although hoping for a miracle wasn't worth it, he was unlikely to decide to share any secret findings with them. Most likely, he'd ask them to leave him alone. The day was rather gloomy. Together with Veronica, they headed to Steve's place. But before reaching the policeman's house, Veronica suddenly stopped. "Wait a moment." She pulled out lipstick and powder from her purse and swiftly touched up her lips. Then she let her hair down from the ponytail, shook it out, and asked Candace, "So, how do I look?" She grinned at Candace, who looked surprised. "Are you planning to charm him or something?" "No. It's just that when a woman looks good, men are more willing to share information with her." Veronica winked. "Admit it. You're just bored," Candace said, "after your Andy and his criminal dramas." "I'm not bored at all." Veronica sniffed. "You better study harder while I'm still alive. Just flutter your eyelashes, act dumb, and he'll spill everything you want." I knew about all of Andy's bills, even how he dodged taxes. Men, they're like dogs. They see a stimulus, they react. We are complicated. "All right. Let's go, my complicated friend. Maybe he's not even home." Candace adjusted her hair too. "Just in case you distract him with your beauty, Veronica, and I'll ask the questions." Steve was indeed at home. He opened the door so quickly, as if he was expecting guests. He was wearing an old sports suit with a faded logo on the chest. "Do you have something else to report?" the man asked, forgetting to greet them. "No." Veronica smiled brightly at him. We just wanted to know how the case with the drowned woman, Clover, is progressing. After all, we have the right to know. And where do you get that right? Steve leaned against the door frame and eyed Veronica. Are you working for the FBI and taking over the case? Is that so? No. We, among other things, found that body. Veronica kept smiling. But Candace noticed her clenched fists. So, officer, if not for us, if not for you, someone else would have found her. Steve sighed. Ladies, relax. Don't meddle where you're not asked to. Not going to tell us. Veronica took a step towards Steve and gently took his hand. But why? Don't you have any sympathy? Do I have sympathy? Steve nodded. Ladies, I'm not going to indulge your curiosity. You know what curiosity is. Curiosity is not a vice. Veronica smiled at him, and a big nuisance. Candace blurted out suddenly. Steve looked at her with interest. Exactly. He freed his hand from Veronica's grip. Well, I need to get back to work. Have a good day. But still, Candace pleaded. Was she murdered? Or did she just... Well, I remember Clover from childhood. She scared us when we used to sneak into the church. It was like she was protecting it from someone. Well, I feel so sorry for her. The experts wrote that she drowned. Steve finally replied after some thought. Candace sensed a hint of doubt in his voice. But if she drowned, then that's it. But you don't believe that, do you? Candace asked. He smiled in response. Why do you care what I believe? Ladies, go home. You are bothering me. If you know something, tell me. If not, then leave. We don't know anything. Candace admitted. Well then, goodbye. Steve nodded politely and closed the door. What a jerk. Veronica hissed. We found the body for him. And he, yes, ungrateful. Candace nodded. Veronica, let's just go already. Why are you getting so worked up? Well, I rarely find bodies and get involved in investigations. Veronica grabbed Candace's hand. Come on. Let's go check out the crime scene. Ha, what? Candace was surprised. Are you trying to be a forensic scientist now? Let's go. Veronica tugged harder at Candace's hand. Maybe we'll find something the experts missed. And Candace obediently followed her former classmate, mentally cursing herself for her soft nature. She could have been sitting at home with her mom, knitting socks and watching some old movie on TV. Veronica was like an unleashed dog. Really, they left the yard and walked along the road that led to the river. If there's anything there, it's already been found. Candace told Veronica, and anyway, Veronica, she probably floated downstream. She was probably killed elsewhere. So, you also believe she was murdered? Veronica brightened. See, my intuition tells me so. What intuition? Candace groaned. Goodness, Veronica, where does all this interest come from? Well, while I was sitting at home waiting for Andy, I used to watch detective shows. Veronica replied. I love them. I regretted not becoming a detective. I would have been a great detective, you know. I noticed details that others don't see. I always guessed who the killer was in movies, and I used to write detective stories while sitting with my mother-in-law. Candace confessed. Also out of boredom. Every day was the same there. So, I sat there, making up stories. Probably silly. Veronica stopped and looked at Candace in surprise. Well, I never imagined you as a writer. Will you let me read them? Well, I never showed them to anyone. Candace felt herself blushing. Veronica, it's all nonsense. Who would be interested in that? Come on. Veronica demanded. I'll tell you what to change, if anything. And then we'll publish books together, make loads of money. Andy will see it and go crazy. And yours too. They'll realize what women they've lost will be like. Like two Agatha Christies. Candace listened to Veronica with half an ear. She pondered about the royalties of famous writers. where they would spend them if she were the most popular author. But Candace couldn't shake off her thoughts about Clover. What a tragic fate. She wondered what could have driven the woman to madness. Rumor had it that there was some terrible tragedy in her life. Yet almost no one in the village remembered exactly what had happened. It seemed like Clover had always been there, a local landmark, akin to the ruins of the church or the old oak tree growing at the crossroads. Finally, they reached the river. Veronica had already progressed in her musings to planning a house with future royalties, and right by the lake. Candace, she declared, living by the water is beneficial. You age slower there. It's the humidity. Looks like it's here. Candace interrupted her. Yes, I remember this willow. We used to sit under it back then. So, shall we go looking for clues? Veronica asked. Veronica kicked off her sandals and headed towards the water. Come on, Candace. Why are you standing there? Candace sighed and took off her sneakers. Arguing with Veronica seemed futile. They waded into the water, knee-deep, and started walking along the reeds. Candace didn't notice anything suspicious. The gloves must have been left by the experts. Probably. She pointed to a blue latex glove hanging on one of the reeds. We probably won't find anything else. Veronica, I'm telling you, everything has been found. But her friend couldn't be stopped. Her eyes were burning with excitement. She must have been here, right? Veronica asked, stopping in her tracks. Well, seems like it. Candace hesitated. Here, search. Veronica started to sift through the bottom with her feet. Oh, something stabbed my foot. It turned out to be a shard of glass from a bottle. She pulled it out and put it in her pocket. Maybe evidence. Veronica explained with a serious expression. You're like a child. Candace sighed. Let's keep searching. Veronica retorted. We'll show Steve what us ladies are capable of. Candace obediently began inspecting the bottom. Nothing but sand, small stones, and reeds. Occasionally, there were some small fish, but they were unlikely to be related to Clover's murder. Suddenly, something glinted among the reeds. There was something lying right in the thickets at the bottom. Candace blinked. No, it wasn't her imagination. Perhaps another shard of glass. Some people have no clue how to behave in nature, so they litter wherever they please. Did you find something? Veronica asked eagerly. No. Or maybe yes. Candace took a few steps towards the strange object and crouched down. She squinted at it. It looks like some sort of jewelry. Probably. Children were playing, and some girl lost her bracelet or earring. Candace reached out and retrieved the piece of jewelry from the water. What's that? Veronica jumped over to her friend, almost losing her balance and falling into the reeds. Candace handed her the find. It was an earring, quite large, golden, with a huge red stone surrounded by smaller stones. The earring resembled either a drop or a pear in shape. Looks like some trinket. Candace sighed. Someone lost it, probably cheap. Too big to be a real gem. Veronica looked at her former classmate in amazement. It looks real. Candace, I don't understand how they didn't find it. Oh, come on. It can't be real. Candace skeptically smiled. It's too huge. You see, I understand that your ex never gave you any jewelry. Veronica squinted. But Andy, my ex, he gave me plenty. I left them all when I left. Silly, wasn't it? They couldn't have missed something like this. Candace doubted. They could have, Veronica said, stuffing the earring into her pocket. They very well could have. We should give it to Steve, Candace suggested. He'll know what to do. Yeah. Veronica patted her pocket. If he didn't find it, then it's ours. And we'll find the killer. Swimming. A familiar voice of Candace came from the reeds. Steve was approaching them. His face was grim. Just taking a stroll. Veronica lied to him. Is it against the law? Aren't there any other places to stroll? Steve approached them, squinting skeptically. Ladies, stop amateur sleuthing. You came, and you're hindering my work. The case is closed. Clover drowned. Maybe she fell from the shore, Maybe she decided to take a dip at night. But you also came, probably doubting that she drowned. Drown herself, Candace speculated. So, what are you looking for? Not us, right? Not you. Steve agreed. Please leave the crime scene however you want, Veronica replied, flashing her eyes. Good luck with the investigation. She headed towards the shore. Candace gave Steve a guilty smile and followed her friend. I don't like him, Veronica declared, slipping on her sandals. Thinks he's someone special. But really, he's just an empty suit. I can see right through those types. Why didn't you give him the earring then? Candace asked. What if it's important? I won't give it to him. It's our clue. We'll investigate. And we'll find out who killed Clover. I'm telling you. Veronica insisted. Where would she get earrings like that, Veronica? Candace shrugged. She lived in the woods. God knows what she survived on. People used to leave food near the church for her, and she'd drag it back to her den. We need to find out where she lived, Veronica speculated, and search everything there. I'm not searching anything, Candace protested. Are you suggesting we wander around the forest? We could easily get lost there. Let's just go see Michael, okay? We've been here for a while, and we still haven't met up with him. What about Michael? Veronica asked, surprised. You think he did it? Candace made a face. Veronica, you've been watching too many detective shows. No, he's been gathering information about Griffith Town. Maybe he heard something about Clover. I'm telling you, she's a local landmark. Listen, that's actually not a bad idea, Veronica said, seemingly oblivious to her friend's expression. Let's go see Michael right now and find out. I wonder if he even remembers us. Let's go tomorrow. Okay, Candace pleaded. Today has been too eventful for me. Plus, Veronica, I promised my mom I'd help with making jam. We are going to make apple jam. Jam? Veronica teased. You lack a spirit of adventure, Candace. Andy loved me for that very spirit. By the way, oh well, make your jam, and we'll go see Michael tomorrow. By the way, do you need help with the jam? Candace suddenly realized that Veronica just didn't want to be alone, trying to distract herself. That's why she got so involved in the Clover story. That's why she insisted on visiting. She doesn't show it, but she's upset about parting ways with her mysterious Andy. Come on, let's go. You'll help. We need to slice the apples. The harvest is good this year, so there's a lot of work. Candace smiled. Hey, tell me about your rogue. It's interesting. Veronica pouted. What's there to tell? The horrible man hid his secrets from me. If he'd just told me, I might have forgiven him. But now, well, spill it. Candace urged her friend. You'll have time while we work. Veronica thought for a moment and then said, well, listen, he's just the perfect man. A real chommer. Once, Veronica went to the city with a specific goal: to find herself a husband. Naturally, the man had to meet a whole range of criteria: a wealthy, with an apartment, no intrusive relatives, a good job, preferably with his own business. Stefania early on explained to her daughter that it's difficult for a girl to make it on her own in life. She needs some support, either from wealthy parents or a husband who will solve all problems and provide the desired lifestyle. Veronica didn't have wealthy parents, so she had to hope for a husband. At first, luck wasn't on her side. She got a job as a dishwasher. There was barely enough money to rent a room on the outskirts. There was no time left for searching for a prospective husband. Veronica would come home and collapse exhausted on the couch, and then go back to work. She quickly realized that this wasn't going to work. She asked to be transferred to the position of waitress. Veronica worked in a small restaurant with very democratic prices. Usually, students and young couples in love, who couldn't afford fancier places, frequented it. But Veronica believed that one day some oligarch would come in, notice her, and take her to his penthouse or country mansion. 3 years went by. The oligarch never appeared. Only middle-aged drunken visitors would approach Veronica, who weren't her target audience. However, one romance did happen. The man was handsome and claimed to earn a good living. He boasted about recently buying an apartment downtown and hinted that who knows, maybe he would move there together with Veronica. He was about 20 years older, but she believed that men, like wine, only get better with age. The romance lasted for 6 months and ended when Veronica found out that her beloved was long and firmly married, with 2 children, and had bought the apartment for his family. Veronica then decided to let go of this person and forget about him forever. However, as a parting gesture, she negotiated with the guys who were renovating her ex's apartment to brick up an egg in the wall, which would rot over time, emitting an unbearable foul smell. She had to pay the guys almost all of her savings, but she didn't mind the money. Stefania taught her that evil must be punished, and it should be done by people. God doesn't have time for all the little things. Sometimes, it's worth taking responsibility into one's own hands. And the thought of the cheater's wife painfully trying to find the source of the smell was extremely satisfying for Veronica. One day, she struck up a conversation with her colleague, named Anna. Anna looked like she stepped out of a picture, with slightly plump lips, long light hair, and slender legs, which the owner clearly worked hard on at the gym. That's exactly how Veronica wanted to look herself. Expensive. Like a woman who invests money in herself. Veronica didn't understand one thing. How did Anna end up in their restaurant, working as a waitress? Such a girl should spend her time at resorts and beauty salons, not carrying trays with cheap snacks. Veronica decided to befriend Anna, and she succeeded. It turned out that Anna had recently divorced with a wealthy businessman. Or rather, they didn't officially divorce. She had to leave him. They weren't officially married, although they lived together for almost 4 years. The man simply found someone else, younger and prettier, and he kicked Anna to the curb. Like Veronica once did, Anna came from the provinces with no connections or savings, so she had to take the first job she could find. Veronica felt sorry for Anna, but at the same time, she believed that Anna could be a valuable source of information. For example, she might reveal where oligarchs and businessmen hang out, and Veronica was certain she wouldn't make Anna's mistakes. She thought making a man marry her would be an easy task, and then it would be even easier to take what's hers in case of divorce. Anna met her ex-boyfriend at the nightclub yacht. That's where they hang out, she explained. They drink, admire the girls, discuss business. It's been like that since the 90s. A tradition, you know. It used to be a hangout for thugs, but now it's decent people. I had no idea, Veronica said, surprised. Well, it's a closed place, for insiders. Anna smirked. They only let you in by special invitation. You can't just work in. How did you get there then? Veronica asked, feeling like the gates to the world of big money and oligarchs were about to open for her. Me? I paid whoever needed to be paid. Anna shrugged. The main thing is to know how to negotiate, girlfriend, and have a wad of cash in your pocket, and the rest will fall into place. And with whom? Veronica almost trembled with excitement. So, do you dream of marrying a rich man? Anna laughed, then looked thoughtfully at Veronica. Maybe you'll succeed. You're cute. No shine. Of course, you look, sorry, like a provincial. Get yourself in order first, and then I'll tell you how to get into the yacht. To get herself in order, Veronica had to take out a loan. She updated her wardrobe, got a haircut, and manicured her nails. And she realized one simple thing. To be beautiful, you need money. No, she had always considered herself cute, but truly glamorous. It took quite a financial investment. Who needs natural beauty? It's boring. You need shine. Anna was right. An uncut diamond could easily be mistaken for a pebble, but no one could pass by a brilliant one. Finally, Veronica slightly pursed her lips. Now she felt she looked perfect. The only thing left was to find out how to be at the yacht at the right time. Anna instructed her friend, "Listen up. There's a guard named Harry on duty on Fridays. Only on Fridays. So go then. That's when the rich boys gather to relax. On other days too. But they'll be busy with their affairs. They won't notice you. You could run around naked in front of them. Anyway, you pay Harry 1,500. Veronica was flabbergasted. "Well, yeah. And then just handle it yourself. Don't fall for expensive things. There are plenty of those there. No need to waste time on them. Look at their behavior, their demeanor. And don't worry if he's wearing a ring. Many of them have old wives who don't want a divorce. But the boys want some adventure. He'll shower you with money. And if you're a smart girl, he might even give you an apartment and a car." Veronica listened attentively to Anna. Yes, she would have to go to the bank again for a loan. But that's okay. It's her investment in the future. A good investment. At the yacht, Veronica made her way in and was slightly disappointed. She even decided that Anna had tricked her, and she had wasted 1,500 for nothing. Nothing special. Tables in the center, a raised platform with a pole for exotic dancers, a bar counter, and for what had Veronica paid such money? Just an ordinary place. Even the restaurant where she worked looked more respectable. Veronica settled at one of the tables, ordering an indecently expensive champagne. Her mood was spoiled. No wealthy man would come here, but Veronica was mistaken. Luck was on her side that same evening. She pulled her lucky ticket and met Andy. He just sat down next to her and asked, "Alone?" Sighed Veronica. Well, he certainly didn't look like a wealthy man. Just a regular t-shirt, jeans, sneakers, maybe except for the haircut. Clearly done in a good place. Veronica noticed such details right away. 40 to 45 years old. Athletic. With a charming smile. Well, maybe not an oligarch, but quite pleasant. Good enough for a fun time. "I'm alone too. I'm Andy. Can I buy you a drink?" he offered. "I'm Veronica." "Sure," she smiled. "Never seen you here before," Andy said, taking the menu and scanning it. "Would you like a salad?" Veronica grimaced. "How banal. Salad. I'll have one." She nodded. "And more champagne." "It'll be done, lovely lady." Andy raised his hand to get the waiter's attention. "So, shall we get to know each other?" They started talking. He didn't say anything specific about his job. Like, he had his own small business. But he passionately talked about tourism, which apparently he had been passionate about for a long time. By the end of the evening, after they had danced and had a couple of glasses of champagne, Veronica received an invitation for some kayaking trip. Of course, she didn't want to participate in it. But for some reason, she lied to Andy, saying that she also loved hiking. She just wanted to impress him. Nothing more. It was fortunate that one of their chefs at the restaurant was a hiker, constantly talking about his adventures. So Veronica knew a little about it. But she didn't refuse Andy's offer. She liked him. A lot. Yes, he wasn't what she had in mind. But there was something about Andy. Something that intrigued her. Maybe it was his charming smile. Maybe the fact that he didn't talk much about his income, cars, and apartments. But he did captivate her with his stories about hikes. Veronica decided that he would do just fine for a couple of months. A week later, she went on a hike with him. Well, not just with him, but with a group of other tourists. During the hike, Veronica felt bad and scared. She was afraid of the water, froze in the tent, and had no idea how to handle the kayak. Andy quickly realized this and took Veronica under his wing. Of course, he teased her, which annoyed her terribly. But Veronica had no choice. On the last day of the hike, Veronica fell ill. Her temperature rose, and a terrible cough began. "Let's go to my place," sighed Andy. "I'll take care of you. You shouldn't be alone like this." And Veronica agreed. Why not? Besides, it would be useful to see where he lived. At least she could figure out if he had a wife or a steady girlfriend. Of course, some men try to hide the presence of another half. But Veronica found these attempts amusing. Women know how to mark their territory. Lang hair in the comb, a hairpin in the bathroom cabinet, a pack of tampons left in the bedside table drawer. How many times had Veronica found such evidence with her previous boyfriends? Countless. She didn't have high hopes for Andy. He was fun. Yes. Interesting. Yes. But nothing more. He would do as a temporary option. She was sure Andy lived in an ordinary apartment, with cheap furniture, poor repairs. In short, middle class. But when he brought her dirty and freezing to his place, she was stunned. 4 rooms, excellent renovation, everything was top-notch and expensive. Veronica loved browsing interior design magazines. She dreamed of how her apartment would look in the future. And she knew a thing or two about it. Natural marble in the bathroom. Not cheap laminate on the floor, but real hardwood. "Who are you anyway?" Veronica asked, looking around. "Is all this yours?" "Mine," Andy chuckled. "I have my own business. I told you." "And what do you do?" Veronica squinted. "Something illegal." "No." "Why?" Andy warmly smiled at her. "Restaurants, cafes. I'm a chef by profession. I worked in the field for a long time, and then I wanted more. By the way, the yacht also belongs to me. I bought it several years ago, and you didn't tell me." Veronica looked at Andy in astonishment. "Why?" "Because I got tired of women being only interested in my money." He shrugged. "But look at you. You even went on a hike with me." I knew right away you didn't know anything about it." "I understand." Veronica frowned. "By the way, I've actually learned how to paddle quite well." "Well, yes, except that you fell into the water 3 times. He hugged her and kissed her on the forehead. "Go to the bathroom. I'll prepare dinner." In the bathroom, Veronica first examined all the cabinets, even looked under the sink. There were no traces of women's presence. Satisfied, she stepped into the shower cabin. Oh, she wanted to laugh and clap her hands with joy. It turns out she had caught an even bigger fish than she had initially hoped for. Now she just needed to solidify her success, make him fall in love. It was disappointing that he had already seen her with messy, dirty hair, without makeup, and in hiking clothes. But Veronica could change that impression. She went to Andy, wrapped in a towel with her hair down. She thought it would have a stunning effect. Sitting on a chair, crossing her legs. Any man seeing such a sight would lose his mind. She walked into the kitchen. Andy was conjuring over an omelette with vegetables, humming to himself. Veronica gracefully sat on a stool, revealing her slender legs, and looked at him invitingly. But Andy just frowned. "You're sick, Veronica." "There, in the bedroom. I have clean pajamas in the closet. Choose one for yourself." She hung her head. "And do I really not appeal to you at all?" The man stepped away from the stove, leaned over her, kissed her nose, and said softly, "You have no idea how much I like you. Just need to wait a bit until you are better, so everything will be right. Don't rush it. By the way, you're staying over tonight." "Okay." Surprised, Veronica changed into pajamas, which were a bit too big for her. Maybe he's crazy. There are no such men. There just aren't. They had dinner together, then watched a movie. Then they went to bed together on his bed. They lay cuddled up, and Veronica suddenly realized that she had never felt as good and comfortable with any man as she did with Andy. She hadn't counted on love as a bonus to a wealthy man, and it even scared her a little. But Veronica's fears turned out to be unfounded. Within a couple of weeks, she had already moved in with Andy and quit her job. Now she only took care of the house and herself. Cooked, cleaned, and waited for him in the evenings with dinner ready. Veronica liked her new life. Andy gave her as much money as she asked for, and even more. She bought expensive dresses she could only dream of before. feeling like a real Cinderella. So they lived for several years. They wanted to get married, but the wedding kept getting postponed. Andy wanted to go on a long trip for a couple of months after the celebration, but work kept him tied down. Veronica was a little upset, but she didn't show it, because otherwise, Andy was perfect. It was hard to believe he really existed, and that he ended up with her, just a regular girl from the countryside. But then, one evening, as Veronica was returning from the beauty salon, she noticed two guys in leather jackets following her. It was the jackets that caught her attention. The day was warm. Everyone else was dressed weather appropriately. But these guys, Veronica turned the corner. The guys turned after her. The distance between them quickly narrowed. She almost started running, and then someone grabbed her arms. She realized they were pulling her into an alley. She tried to scream, but her mouth was firmly shut. Someone forcibly pressed her against the wall. "Listen, tell your man not to forget about the debt," one of the guys hissed. She tried to break free, but they held her tightly. "And don't even think about going to the police. We'll find you and send pieces of you to your man. Do you understand?" And the second guy punched Veronica in the stomach. She felt like she was about to lose consciousness from the pain, but she found the strength to weakly nod. "Well, that's good. Also, tell him that before we kill you, we'll have some fun with you. You're pretty." The first one spat on the ground and smiled. Veronica noticed a scar on his cheek. A thought flashed through her mind. They don't hide their faces, so they're not afraid of anything. Or they really intend to kill her. Finally, they hit her again. She still passed out, and when she came to, they were gone. There was a young woman kneeling next to her with a frightened face. "I called an ambulance," she said. "What happened? Were you unconscious here?" "No need for an ambulance," Veronica said. "Everything seems fine now. I think I just overheated." "But it's already cool in the evening," the woman exclaimed. No, we should wait." "No need." Veronica grimaced. "Cancel the call." "Well, let me at least escort you home." Veronica refused help. She called a taxi and went home, waited for Andy there, and gave him the first ever scandal in his life. She screamed, smashed dishes, and cried. He tried to calm her down, but Veronica wouldn't let him near her. "You're a fuck. Who did you get involved with?" "I don't need this." Veronica, I don't understand what you're talking about." Andy tried to persuade her. "We need to call the police or hire a detective. You'll have a bodyguard, I promise." The words about a bodyguard finally broke Veronica. The thought of having some unknown armed person following her around for days on end seemed unbearable to her, as did the thought of the dark deeds her beloved man might be involved in. Maybe he's dealing in illegal substances, maybe organs. Who knows what else? Veronica was terribly afraid of getting involved in criminal activities. The next day, she was traveling to her hometown, Griffithtown. "Well, that's something," Candace exclaimed after listening to Veronica's story. "I couldn't tell you had been through something like that." Veronica just waved it off. "You have to keep a straight face. That's what Mom always taught me. No matter what happens." "Do you miss him?" Candace asked. Veronica hesitated for a moment. "Miss him? You know, if he had gone bankrupt and lost everything, I would have stayed with him. But I won't tolerate such things. That's it. I don't want to talk about it anymore." "All right then. Here we are." Candace opened the gate and let her friend in. "Mom's been waiting. I won't let you go until we've peeled all the apples." Veronica. That night, Veronica stayed at Candace's place, and the next morning, it was decided to pay a visit to Michael. They had breakfast on the veranda. Renee baked another pie, and Candace brewed tea. It's delicious," Veronica said. "Better than at a restaurant." "Renee, you should open a cafe. You'd have lots of customers, I'm telling you." Renee laughed. "Oh, it's nothing. You haven't tried my casserole yet." That's what you'd really like. Can I try it? Veronica asked. You'll try it. You'll try it. Renee promised. Oh, I forgot to ask. Did Steve tell you who killed Clover? No, Mom. Candace sighed. He didn't want to. Where did he even come from? He came from the city, about 4 years ago. I think, the woman replied. They say he was successful there, and then he asked to come here to the backwoods. I don't know what happened to him there. He's a good guy, always helps out, never refuses anyone. But he doesn't really socialize with anyone either. Our ladies were hovering around him at first. Then he just brushed them off. He didn't brush them off. They saw who he was and decided to stop hovering around. Ha ha. Veronica chuckled. Renee, what do you know about Clover? Why did she go crazy? Renee pondered. Well, I don't really know much, but I remember her from childhood. I was still a girl, and she was already living in the woods. We tried to find her house so many times, but couldn't. Did she bury herself underground or what? She seemed old to me even back then. Now I realize she's about 25 to 30 years older than me. And mind you, I'm 54 now. Why did she go crazy, Mom? Candace asked, and Renee began absent-mindedly smoothing out the snow-white tablecloth with embroidered chamomiles along the edge. Well, people said all sorts of things. Some thought she was always like that. Some said her husband left her or died, and that's what drove her crazy. She wasn't a local. I even knew her last name, but I forgot. Anyway, there were plenty of rumors, but who knows the truth? I know she loved our church. Always hung around there a lot. Renee said. Did she have any enemies? Veronica leaned back in her chair. Enemies? She's just a bit crazy. Renee smiled. Sure, she runs around scaring kids, but everyone's used to her by now. After thanking Renee for breakfast, Candace and Veronica went to visit their classmate Michael. He lived next door to Veronica, in one of the apartment buildings. She didn't know exactly where, but she hoped they'd find out. And they did. One of the old ladies informed them that a young guy who's been gathering information about Griffith Town had recently moved in, and he lived on the 3rd floor, apartment 21. Do you think he'll recognize us? Candace asked as they climbed the stairs. We haven't seen him in years. We are wasting time. Veronica sighed. I think we should look for Clover's house in the woods. She must have lived somewhere, right? Veronica, have you lost your mind? Candace glanced at her friend. Are you bored now? Fancy yourself a detective, as if you're not curious. Her friend retorted. Oh, here's where he lives. I wonder if he's home. There was no doorbell by the door. Candace knocked cautiously, and a couple of minutes later, she heard shuffling steps. The door opened. She recognized Michael immediately. He was still plump, with a round, good-natured face. Though he wasn't wearing glasses anymore, probably had surgery, or switched to contacts. If you're here to sell something, don't waste your time, Michael stated. I'm not interested in anything. Michael, we are not here to sell anything. Candace laughed. Didn't you recognize us? He squinted, studying her face. Candace, is that you? Of course, it's me. Candace nodded. And this is Veronica. Well, Michael exclaimed, throwing up his hands. What a surprise. Why are you here? I heard you both went to the city or something. We came back, Veronica replied. Decided to pay you a visit. Oh, well, come in, girls. Let me treat you to some tea. I don't have much else, but still, Michael bustled around. The kitchen's there. The door next to it is the bathroom. Don't forget to wash your hands. A couple of minutes later, they were already sitting in the kitchen. The kettle was boiling on the stove. They found some cookies too. Michael, are you like a local historian or something? Candace asked. So, you're researching the history of our hometown? Yeah. Why? Michael sat on a chair, crossing his arms over his full belly. I want to write a book. Finished grad school. Gotta keep moving forward. Right, well. Veronica shook her head. So, now you're a big scholar. Well, not exactly big. Michael chuckled. His belly jiggled. More like medium. He added, and is there anything interesting about Griffith Town's history? Candace inquired. You know, there's actually quite a bit. Michael rubbed his nose as if adjusting invisible glasses. Yeah, he probably started wearing contacts recently. I'm currently digging through the archives. Sadly, there's not much information left. But I'm collecting some stuff, and anything interesting. Veronica looked at Michael with curiosity. Like maybe some treasures. Suddenly, Michael flinched, his eyebrows furrowing. What treasures? He asked. Oh, who knows? Veronica shrugged. Golden coins in the walls. Treasure chests in the hospital basement. Ha, no treasures, Michael said firmly. Where did you hear that? The kettle boiled. Michael turned to the stove. Veronica gave Candace a meaningful look, but she didn't catch the meaning of her glance. Michael, we're here for a reason, Veronica said as Michael placed cups of cheap tea bag tea in front of them. Well, you can't just drop by for a casual visit anymore, huh? He sighed. Spill it. What's up? Know anything about Clover? Michael silently looked at Veronica, seeming to forget to blink. Then he asked softly, what should I know about her? What do you mean, Michael? Candace was surprised. Oh, nothing. He shook his head. I heard she died. Drowned or something. Sad. I remember how she scared us back then. She howled like a wolf. Still gives me goosebumps. Yeah, I remember. Candace shivered. It's really sad, Michael said after a short pause. I actually know a bit about it. Found out by accident. Back in college. Came across an article in an old newspaper. Got interested. And started digging. Ended up uncovering the history of our Clover. It's pretty bleak. Actually, what's the story? Veronica held her breath, gazing at the apartment's owner. Nothing extraordinary. Michael sighed. Just a tragic love story. Well, come on, spill it, Candace demanded. We're intrigued. Michael twirled the cookie between his fingers, gazing thoughtfully into space. Well, Clover used to work as an investigator. She was handling a case involving a certain authority figure, Donnie. He was quite a looker, tall and muscular, even worked out in prison when they put him away. Anyway, Clover used to visit him in prison. You know, interrogations, face-offs. And this woman, she was lonely, never started a family, all wrapped up in her work. So, predictably, she fell for him. He had a way with words, you see, the kind of words women want to hear. So, he fed her all of that. I read a lot about it later. Inmates can conduct courses on how to make any woman fall for them in a couple of days. Michael paused, as if choosing his words carefully. Veronica squirmed in her chair with impatience. Finally, the man continued his story. Well, in short, Clover fell in love, almost for the first time in her life. Donnie didn't seem like a dangerous criminal to her anymore, stuck in prison. No, she saw him as a noble outlaw, so to speak, pushed onto the criminal path by a tough childhood. Donnie did grow up in a rough environment, without a father, witnessing his mother's constant drinking bouts and her boyfriends. He was often beaten, sometimes forgotten when it came to meals. What kind of life could a boy have, growing up in those conditions? Tell me. Anyway, he fell in with a bad crowd, and then Clover understood. If Donnie had had an education, he could have achieved anything one could dream of. He had natural intelligence, was charming, and understood people well. It's just that he wasted his talents. He formed a gang that terrorized the entire town, robbed stores, extorted small business owners, and eliminated competitors. Clover believed he had every chance of turning his life around, getting on the right path, and she thought she could help him do that. Donnie wholeheartedly agreed. "Darling, if I get out of here, I'll start over," he'd say. "Find a job, get an education. And you know, I've always dreamed of having kids. 2 or 3. I've dreamed of a quiet, peaceful life without all this dirt." Clover believed in the man. How could she not, when he looked at her with such loving eyes, when his touch sent shivers down her spine like an electric shock? "It's a shame we met under these circumstances," sighed Donnie. "If I had found you a little earlier, Clover, my life would have turned out completely differently. You wouldn't have been working as an investigator. That's not a job for a woman. I would have been making money, showering you with flowers, and you would have been walking around in diamonds and furs." Clover changed. She started wearing feminine dresses, let her hair down, and even began to wear makeup, albeit clumsily. But most of all, she regretted that Donnie couldn't see her like this. She couldn't just show up at the prison wearing makeup and a short skirt. "If only you could help me get out," he repeated. If only it were in your power. Clover understood. There was no way to free her beloved. He was arrested for murder. He killed a rival, killed him himself, in front of witnesses, and he had so much on him that it would be enough for several life sentences. And no lawyer could help him. He'd get at least 25 years, no chance of parole. "I'll come after you," Clover promised. "I'll quit my job, bring you goodies every day, and wait for you, my love, no matter what it takes." "Don't ruin your life," Donnie replied. "And don't ruin mine. I don't want to hope that someone will be waiting for me." "You won't wait, I know." "Then, let's get married right here, in prison," she suggested. "I'll leave my job for you. What's the point of it if you are suffering?" "Don't. If only you could help me escape." He sighed. She didn't know what to do. Should she bring him a file? That only happens in movies. Was her fate really so tragic? To meet the love of her life and lose him immediately? No, she would definitely come up with something. One day, during another interrogation, or rather, meeting, Donnie told Clover that he had a solution. "They'll be transporting me in a week," he announced. "That's when I'll be able to escape. But you have to help me." "How?" She gasped. "It's dangerous. There are people who will help me. You have to contact them. Remember this number. Call them, say you are from me." That same evening, trembling with fear, Clover dialed the number Donnie gave her. I'm from Donnie," she said quietly. "I'm listening," came the smooth voice of a man. She laid out her beloved's plan. "Okay, but it'll cost you a lot of money." "Big money," said the invisible interlocutor. "How much?" she asked. The man named the sum. The sum that would have to be paid for her beloved's freedom. "Well, that's too much," exclaimed the woman. "Well, then it's not meant to be," the man said calmly. "Think about it until tomorrow." The phone hung up. Clover burst into tears. She didn't have that kind of money, and she couldn't possibly have it. She remembered Donnie, his eyes, his smile. She couldn't even hold him. And yet, she dreamed so much of being with him for real, having children with him, growing old beside him, and then doting on grandchildren. "Well, I don't know how, but she got the money," Michael said after a brief pause. "They attacked the car Donnie was being transported in, and he really did escape." "Well," Veronica exclaimed in surprise, even whistling. "And then what? Did they get married and live happily ever after?" "Nothing like that," Michael sighed sadly. "Donnie was found. Just a few days later. He already had a new passport. Tried to get a room in a hotel, but he was recognized. The police were called. In short, they shot him dead on the spot when they caught him. And Clover confessed to everything." "Oh God, what a nightmare," whispered Candace. "Poor woman." "Oh, I don't know if she's poor or not," Michael grimaced. "She helped a dangerous criminal escape and would have continued to help him. He would have surely returned to his old ways. Who knows how many more lives he would have taken. So, what happened next? Veronica nudged Michael's sleeve. Don't get distracted. Okay, next. He shrugged. She had a nervous breakdown. That's what happened next. She was declared insane and sent to a mental institution. There, Clover was treated for some time, and then she was released. I don't know why. Then she returned to her hometown. Her mother, who lived here, had already passed away by then, couldn't bear the grief, and Clover went to live in an abandoned house in the woods. Well, you know the rest. I wonder, where did she get the money from? Candace said. I imagine they demanded a lot for the escape. A whole lot. Who knows? Michael turned to the window. Maybe she borrowed it from someone or sold something. What could she possibly sell? Veronica tapped her fingers on the cup. And how come nobody found out about it? What exactly? Why does it matter? Michael shot Veronica a stern look. That's not the point. How did you find out about all this? Well, it was in the newspapers a lot of the time. And I know how to work with information. The man proudly replied. Sometimes you can reconstruct a complete picture from fragments, especially if you know how to read between the lines. You're amazing. Veronica praised him. What else have you reconstructed? Nothing. Michael replied hastily. I'm still looking for information. When you write your book, I hope you'll give me an autograph. Candace smiled. Listen, could Clover have had some expensive jewelry? What? He froze for a moment, then leaned forward on the table. What kind of jewelry? I'm just asking. Candace was surprised by his reaction. Maybe they wrote something about it in the reports. You know, in your newspapers. She didn't have anything. Michael frowned. Where did these thoughts come from? Well, we found this where she drowned. Veronica rummaged in her pocket and pulled out a gold earring with a red stone. Michael carefully took the earring in his hand. Oh well, he chuckled. This is like the 19th century. Early. No way. Candace whispered. Just kidding. Michael laughed and handed the earring to Veronica. Probably a fake. Where would such valuables come from here? Just toss it, girls. Maybe Clover found it somewhere and kept carrying it around. She was out of her mind. After all, they chatted for another 20 minutes. Michael talked about his upcoming book, about the doctoral dissertation he would write as soon as his work saw the light of day. Candace started to feel a bit bored. Michael just kept on talking. Clearly, he was proud of his work. But something about it bothered Candace. She couldn't quite put her finger on it. After finishing their tea, Candace and Veronica headed home. As they stepped out onto the street, they made their way to the store. Renee had asked her daughter to buy sugar for jam. He seemed strange. Veronica remarked. Did you notice he seemed like he was hiding something? I did. Candace replied thoughtfully. Maybe he's afraid to give away information about his book. What if we steal his idea? Oh, by the way, you promised to let me read yours. Veronica smiled. You know, the manuscript. Take it. Candace sighed. And don't say I didn't warn you that it's all silly scribbling and graphomania. But the earring is real after all. Veronica noted. I could tell from his reaction. But why did he decide to lie? By the way, he's become kind of unpleasant. Thinks everyone around him is dumber. A real scholar, but we really are dumber. Candace replied. After all, he finished university. And we're just nobody. On their way home, they discussed their plans for the future. Candace decisively didn't know what she wanted to do. I'll probably go back to work. She sighed. If I remember anything at all. Or maybe I'll retrain. For instance, I've always wanted to make coffee to go, in those little cups, and I'll find myself a better man than Addie. Veronica frowned. He'll see me and realize what kind of woman he lost. But I won't go back to him. Those letters got on my nerves. He used to call before. So, I changed my SIM card. Now he's writing. Veronica's tone revealed her longing for Andy. But she tried not to show it. Candace genuinely felt sorry for her former classmate. As for her ex-husband, Barry, Candace didn't miss him at all, as if all those years hadn't existed. Maybe, indeed, Barry hadn't been part of her life. There had only been his sick mother and Barry, living in his own world as if nothing was happening around him. They were on par with the church. "Veronica, shall we go in?" Candace suggested. "Sit for a bit, like in childhood." "Ha, let's go." Her friend laughed. "Oh, but my mom never let me come here, and I really wanted to be with everyone." They turned and walked towards the church across the field. Grasshoppers were jumping from under their feet, and the sun-warmed greenery smelled intoxicating. "It's so good here after all." Candace breathed in the air with pleasure. "Why did I feel the pull to the city?" "Because there are jobs and opportunities there," Veronica replied. "But it's really not bad here. I was thinking, maybe Andy and I will buy a house somewhere like this. Well, when we're older." Inside the church, almost nothing had changed. Even the log was still lying against the wall, just like before. Candace sat on it and stretched out her legs with pleasure. "Feels like all those years never happened. I wonder why Clover was drawn here," she mused. Veronica suddenly touched one of the walls. "What if, Candace, she believed in God?" "I don't know. She's crazy. Who can understand her?" Candace shrugged, plucking a blade of grass and putting it in her mouth. "But she has such a terrible story, doesn't she? To fall in love with someone like that." "I almost married someone like that," Veronica replied grimly. "Well, hold on. I wouldn't compare." Candace looked sympathetically at Veronica. "Maybe you two will reconcile again." "Yeah, sure." Veronica sat down next to Candace and pulled the earring out of her pocket. "But why do you think he lied to me? Michael seems to be hiding something from us." The evening was setting in, and it was getting chilly. But Candace didn't want to go home. Childhood memories flooded her mind. How they used to sit here and tell scary stories. How they sought shelter from the rain in this church with their mom when they once went mushroom picking and got caught in a downpour. How she sat here alone and pondered what she would become when she grew up, dreaming of great love and boundless happiness. Suddenly, she heard children's voices. "There is no way." "Yes, there is." "No, no, no." Veronica smiled and pressed her finger to her lips. The voices were getting closer. "I'm telling you, absolutely not. It didn't happen, but I'm telling you." She kissed him. "I saw it myself." Two girls, about 10 and 12 years old, entered the church. They were arguing, seemingly unaware of the unintended audience. The first girl, a slightly chubby blonde, was wearing shorts and a pink t-shirt. The second, a tall, slender brunette. They couldn't have been kissing. "Oh." One of the girls noticed Veronica and Candace. "Sorry." "No worries." Candace laughed. "We're just hanging out here, and you won't tell Mom we were here, will you?" The blonde asked quietly. "She'll scold us." "Times change, but traditions don't," Veronica said to them. "No, we won't tell." "Do you like it here?" "We do," nodded the brunette. "No adults around, and they just get in the way." "Oh, sorry." The girl's cheeks flushed. Yeah. Adults just bring trouble." Veronica sighed. "And don't worry, girls. We won't tell anyone anything." "Do you know you can find treasures here?" the blonde suddenly whispered. The brunette nudged her in the side. "Mary, what are you doing?" And Mary lowered her gaze. Well, hold on. "What treasures?" asked Candace. "Oh, various ones," shrugged Mary. "Like Sandy recently foundering. Probably something Clover lost." "Clover?" Veronica tensed. "Yeah, the one who died recently." Mary sat on the log next to Candace and looked at her with trusting eyes. "Are you looking for treasures too?" "I guess." "No, we're not looking. But it's very interesting to hear." Candace smiled gently. "Why do you think these are Clover's treasures?" "Well, our mom used to bring her food." Mary stretched out her long, slender legs right to the doorstep And sometimes Clover would leave her something. Earrings, stones. We even found a little ring here. And where does your mom live? Veronica asked. Can we meet her? Why? Will you tell her we were here? Mary got scared. No. We knew Clover. Once, Veronica lied. We wanted to learn more about her. The girls exchanged glances. Veronica took out her wallet from her bag and pulled out a $10 bill. Here, for you, for gum and soda, or whatever you like there. Okay. Mary cautiously took the bill. Just, please, say that you met us on the road, not here. Okay, agreed, nodded Candace. So, shall we go? It turned out the girls were sisters. Their mother had been living in Griffith Town with her husband and children for 10 years. Mom works as a dairy woman, Mary explained. She used to live in another village, but they closed the farm there. So she moved here with Dad. Dad's a truck driver. He's often not at home. Mom's on the farm. When I grow up, I'll be a dairy woman too. They reached the right house. What will you tell her? Suddenly worried the brunette, whose name turned out to be Kelly. We'll say, for example, that we're journalists, writing an article about your village, suggested Veronica. Kelly thought for a moment, then nodded. All right, come in, she said. They found Sandy in the yard, hanging laundry. Mom, these ladies are from the city. They're writing an article about Griffith Town, Mary announced. Can they interview you? Sandy, a pleasant woman in her 40s. She wiped her hands on her long skirt and smiled. What do I know? I'm just a simple woman. Work, home, work, home. Okay, kids, run to the kitchen. Make yourselves dinner. Kelly and Mary disappeared behind the door. Sorry, all I can offer is tea, Sandy said apologetically. I just wasn't expecting guests. What did my girls tell you? Actually, we're interested in Clover, Veronica admitted honestly. Sandy paled, her face stretched. Clover, is she dead already? Why do you need her? Did you communicate with her? Candace asked. You fed her, didn't you? I fed her, Sandy shrugged. I felt so sorry for her. To tears. She lived alone in the woods. She even spent nights in our barn in winter when it was too cold outside. You can't just leave her, can you? And did she thank you? Veronica asked. Yes, she did. Sandy nodded. She brought some trinkets, probably leftovers from her past life. They're lying around here. She left them as a keepsake. Who needs them? Should I wear them? Milk cows. And I won't tell you anything more. Clover hardly spoke, just moved and nodded. Sorry, Sandy, can you show us the jewelry? Candace asked. Well, I guess I can. Sandy looked at her fearfully. Her lips trembled. Will you take it? I'll give it if you need it. Don't be afraid. Please. Candace smiled. We're really journalists. Clover's story is heavy. You know. I know. Of course. Sandy shook her head. She fell in love with the wrong person. It happens. We women are just silly. Always choosing the wrong ones. So she did talk to you after all. Veronica squinted. Sandy's lips trembled even more. Sometimes. Very rarely. She said. All right. Veronica pitied Sandy. Show us the gifts, and we'll be on our way. And sorry in advance for the trouble. Sandy nodded and hurried into the house. The woman returned a couple of minutes later, clutching a small wooden box in her hands. Here you go. A ring. One earring. A pendant. Cheap stuff. But I keep them as a memento. Veronica weighed the jewelry in her hands. Yes, probably inexpensive. Do you happen to know where Clover lived? You know, in the woods. Veronica asked. Sandy pondered. Yeah, I've been there even. Found it accidentally when I was picking cranberries in the swamp during the summer. Clover met me, and she guided me. So, where is it? Veronica perked up. Well, from the clearing. You need to go towards the power line, then turn right and go through the swamp. Or was it left? Sandy pondered. Oh, no, it's right. Her home is there. Well, what a home. Some boards, rags piled up. That's where the poor thing lived. Thank you, Sandy. Veronica smiled. You've been very helpful to us. Just don't tell anyone. Sandy whispered. Not everyone liked Clover here. Some considered her a witch, chased her away. But I pitied her. God forbid someone goes crazy like that. And you are not the first ones asking. By the way, a policeman came by yesterday, asking about her place. My girls told him that I fed Clover. Can you imagine? He even gave them money. I scolded them so much for it. After bidding farewell to Sandy, Veronica and Candace walked out onto the road. The jewelry is real, Veronica observed. All of them. Gold and large stones. Sandy thinks they're fake because she's never seen such stones in her life. It's a common misconception that if the stone is large, then it's just ordinary glass. Wait, where did she get them from? Candace interjected. She didn't make them herself, did she? I have no idea. Veronica hugged herself. But there's something about this story that doesn't sit right with me. We should tell Steve about it, Candace suggested. Who knows? Maybe he doesn't know about the valuables. Oh, no, Veronica grimaced. I don't want to talk to him. He's arrogant, unpleasant, and Kelly and Mary have a whole business going on. Did you notice? The friends laughed. Yeah, seems like the girls are making quite a bit of money from the information about Clover. All right, I'll head home. Don't want to impose on you any longer. Veronica hugged Candace's shoulders. Say hi to Mom for me. I'll definitely drop by for pie. Candace slowly worked along the road, thinking about Clover. It was strange how quickly Veronica said goodbye to her. Surely, she must be burning with the desire to rush off and start searching for Clover's home. Or maybe her friend was just tired. Or perhaps she wanted to contemplate everything she had learned in solitude. Once home, Candace quickly took a shower and went to bed. She was awakened by the ringing of her phone. She grabbed the phone. What? 2 in the morning? Who could need her at such a time? Veronica's name was displayed on the screen. Candace brought the receiver to her ear. Hello, Candace. Candace. Help. She heard. They. Then came a strange sound, as if someone had run a wet finger along glass. A thud. Then silence. With trembling hands, Candace dialed Veronica's number. The subscriber is out of the network coverage area. Done, exclaimed Candace. She jumped out of bed and paced the room, hastily putting on jeans and a t-shirt. She had to do something. But what? Without thinking, she rushed out of the house. Where to run? To where Veronica lived. Definitely. That way, she could also involve Michael in the search. She ran past houses and found herself on the road leading to apartment buildings. Her breathing became erratic. Her side ached. But Candace didn't slow down. Arriving at the right building, she struggled up the stairs, cursing herself for her lack of physical fitness. Candace rang the doorbell. No response. Then she knocked. Again, silence. It seems Veronica is somewhere else. Or maybe she's already dead. Or, the thought made Candace feel sick. She descended the stairs and ran to Michael's house. But there was no one there either. Candace's head spun. Maybe she was just dreaming all of this. She dialed her friend's number again, and once more heard the mechanical voice informing her that the subscriber was out of reach. Candace's thoughts were jumbled. What should she do? Steve, he's a policeman. He must help her. Even if it turns out to be a false alarm, it's better to show excessive vigilance and face mockery later than to spend the rest of her life regretting not doing what she should have done. The return journey seemed even more difficult and longer to Candace. She gasped for air like a fish thrown onto the shore. Her lungs burned. At Steve's house, Candace stopped briefly to catch her breath, then knocked on the door. The policeman didn't open it right away. His face looked displeased. What now? More questions about Clover. he asked. Candace looked at him plaintively, and he relented. What? Has something happened? She explained, stumbling over her words. All right, wait, the policeman instructed. I'll get dressed and come out, and you think about where she might have gone. Candace noticed that Steve stood before her in his underwear and a t-shirt. She felt embarrassed and looked away. But should she really be thinking about such trivial matters now? Steve appeared a couple of minutes later wearing jeans and a plaid shirt, with a large bag slung over his shoulder. Candace, listen carefully. Where could your friend be? Think, he urged. I don't know. The woman sobbed. Someone was after her, back in town, enemies of her boyfriend. And that's all I really know, just what we needed. Steve groaned. Was there anything else? Maybe she was planning to go somewhere or mention something strange to you. She only talked about Clover in the past few days, Candace replied. The story got to her. We even went to Michael, talked about it. He told us how she lost her mind. Michael, the guy who studies the history of Griffith Town. Right. Steve mused, fiddling with his shirt collar. I see. Yes, Clover was practically my colleague. Oh, by the way, Michael isn't home either, Candace whispered fearfully. We were at Sandy's, the one who fed Clover. She even told us where Clover lived. In the woods. Wait. Candace suddenly realized. Exactly. Veronica went to look for Clover's house. Do you know where Clover lived? She asked Steve. Well, I have a rough idea. I've been there before, just from a distance. Then I left. The policeman glanced at Candace. Do you think they're there? Well, Veronica could have gone there to search for treasures. Candace grabbed Steve's hand. Let's go. She must be there. And someone attacked her. What makes you think that? I'm sure of it. Candace nodded. I know Veronica. She wouldn't have waited until tomorrow and knew I probably wouldn't agree to go with her. So she went alone. All right. If she's not there, I'll call in reinforcements. Steve nodded. It's a 40-minute work if you know the way. Longer if you don't. And what treasures are these? They're the treasures Clover used to give out to everyone. Earrings, rings, and we even found an earring in the place where she drowned, Candace said. Steve stopped in his tracks. Candace almost bumped into him. Incredible. He muttered, You work, and you know nothing. What are you talking about? Candace squeaked. The man quickly walked ahead again. Candace, do you know Clover's last name? He asked. No. Why? Griffith Town, he said. Her ancestor once owned this village. Rumor had it that her great-grandmother hid the family treasures somewhere during the Revolution. Somewhere in the village. In the 90s, people came here looking for it. They found nothing, of course, just made the church even worse. Our walls broken. And I keep thinking, where did Clover get the money to free Donnie? Maybe she paid with her great-grandmother's diamonds. Seems like there's still something left. Unless they found costume jewelry somewhere. Veronica says it's not costume jewelry. That it's all real. Fascinating, sighed Steve. All right. That's not the main thing. Here, take this flashlight. I got it for you. And watch your step. Roots sticking out here. You could trip. This isn't even a road. It's a path. Follow me. Don't fall behind. Candace felt like the journey had taken an eternity. She stumbled a couple of times, tripping over roots, and painfully hitting first her right, then her left knee. But the woman stubbornly pressed on. Stop here. Steve suddenly commanded. I'll go on from here. But why? Candace protested. I said, stay put. He pulled something out of his bag and tucked it into his waistband. Candace realized with horror what it was. A gun. It seemed their situation was serious. So wait, he whispered. Then slowly, hiding in the shadows of the trees, he emerged onto the edge of the clearing where Clover's house stood. Candace spotted it immediately. Logs, rags, a piece of tarpaulin. Steve seemed to disappear somewhere. It was quiet. Only the nightingale sang in the distance. "Stay still. Don't move," Steve shouted. Candace pressed herself against the tree trunk, trying not to breathe. Her heart pounded. She saw a figure detach from the house. It was a person running towards the edge of the clearing, towards Candace. And it wasn't Steve. The person was heavy-set, breathing heavily. Apparently, running was an unfamiliar activity for him. Steve followed close behind. How did he manage to move so quickly? And what if the heavy-set man managed to escape? Without understanding what she was doing, Candace leaped out from behind the tree and tripped the heavy-set man with such agility that he fell backward, rolling over and covering his face with his hands. Steve caught up with Candace. I asked you to stand quietly," he rasped, catching his breath. "Candace, check on Veronica. I'll deal with this." "And who's this?" she asked. "I won't leave until I know." Steve shone his flashlight on the man's face. Candace was stunned. "Michael, what are you doing here?" "They ruined everything," Michael muttered. "I hate it." "All right, Candace, go." Steve repeated his request. Veronica needed help. Veronica lay on the ground near Clover's strange house. Her friend crouched beside her and gently shook her by the shoulder. She opened her eyes and groaned. "Veronica, Veronica, are you alive? What are you doing here?" "I'm sorry," Veronica whispered. "I'm sorry. I really am an idiot." Candace. Later, Steve made a phone call, explaining their coordinates to someone on the other end. Police officers and rescuers arrived, pulling Veronica out of the woods. Candace followed behind two sturdy men in blue and orange uniforms, carrying stretchers. "Is she okay, though? Really?" Candace kept asking. "Yeah, she'll live," the rescuers reassured her. "Don't worry." Candace went to the hospital with Veronica. It turned out someone had hit her on the head and stomach. Fortunately, besides a concussion and a bruise, Veronica had nothing serious. Candace spent the night at the hospital. A caring nurse brought her a blanket and a pillow, and she slept right on the couch outside the ward. The next morning, Veronica regained full consciousness. Though she felt a bit nauseous, she could speak. It turned out Veronica had indeed decided to go and search for Clover's house. She thought there might be countless treasures hidden there. Armed with a flashlight and wearing rubber boots, she ventured into the woods. She thought it would be an exciting adventure to laugh about later with her friend, but things didn't go as planned. Yes, Veronica found the house in the woods and even went inside. But then she heard footsteps. At first, she thought it was Clover's ghost, coming to punish her for intruding. Then she saw Michael, holding a flashlight just like hers. "What are you doing here?" Michael shouted. "What are you looking for?" "Nothing, Michael. Just curious," Veronica replied, trying to smile. "Are you gathering materials for your book? Want some help?" "Oh, so you've heard about the treasures too." He squinted. "You won't get them." "Okay, Michael. No need to shout. I'll go, I guess." Veronica backed away from Michael. "What treasures are you talking about?" "I have no idea what you're talking about, Michael." "Leave," he said in a voice that wasn't his. A voice that sounded terrifying. She barely had time to nod and turn away when suddenly she felt a sharp pain in her head and lost consciousness. Veronica regained consciousness a few minutes later, managed to find her phone in her pocket, and called Candace. Apparently, Michael heard her voice, came out of the house, and hit her on the head, then in the stomach. She lost consciousness again. "I think he would have killed me," she sighed. "I kept coming to, then blacking out again. I heard him looking for something. I don't know if he found it or not. But did you catch the scoundrel?" "We caught him." Candace nodded. "Steve caught him." "Well done." Veronica rubbed her forehead. "I wonder, will I get even dumber after such blows to the head? Or is there nowhere else to go from here? What do you think, Candace?" And what was Michael looking for? He was looking for the Griffith Town treasures, Candace's friend replied. Apparently, Clover knew about them, and she knew where they were hidden. So Michael decided he should have them. Suddenly, the door to the ward swung open. Candace saw a tall, handsome man in a suit holding a bouquet of white roses. "Veronica," the man exclaimed. "What on earth is going on, Andy?" Veronica smiled broadly at him, but her smile faded instantly. "Go back to your thugs. I told you," she said. "Miss, would you allow us to have a word?" Andy asked politely. "Allow?" Candace turned to Veronica. "Just try," her friend hissed. "All right, I'm leaving." Candace stood up and made a playful curtsy. "I'll come back later." Candace only found out what had happened a week later. Steve was not in town. Veronica was still in the hospital. And Candace suffered from curiosity, eager to find out all the details of the case, trying to distract herself with apple jam. When Steve returned from the city, the police officer immediately came to visit Candace. "Shall we take a walk?" the man suggested. "Tell me what happened," she demanded. "And I knew you'd ask." Steve smiled at her. "I'll tell you. Otherwise you won't leave me alone." It turned out that Michael had taken Clover's life. He confessed to it during the investigation. For several days, he had been following her, trying to figure out where she might hide the treasures. Then he caught her, took the poor woman into the woods, and demanded the information he needed. But Clover remained silent and laughed hysterically, not saying a word. Michael's nerves snapped, and he strangled the unfortunate woman, then threw her into the river. That's where Veronica and Candace found her. "How did he find her house?" Candace asked. "Damn if I know. I suspect Sandy told him." Steve sighed. "She won't confess. She's keeping quiet too. He was actually searching for the treasures in the church at night. He saw Veronica walking along the road with a flashlight, and he followed her. Thought she might be interested in the Griffith Town diamonds, so to speak." "Exactly. We showed him the earring when we were at his place," Candace confessed. "Would have been better if you showed it to me," grumbled Steve. "I know about the earring. This is what it's like working with such clueless citizens. Ha. You guys. Anyway, he followed you, Veronica, then got scared, hit her on the head. Luckily, it didn't go further, and it's a good thing she managed to call, and he didn't even think to take her phone right away. Seems smart. Historian, local export, finished his postgraduate studies, but apparently he didn't read enough detective stories. You know, such criminals are even disappointing." "Well," Candace chuckled. "So, would you have been happy if Veronica had been killed?" "No, of course not." Steve shrugged. "But it would have been much more interesting, don't you think?" "I feel sorry for Clover," Candace sighed. "What a silly fate. Did you find the treasures?" "No, just a couple of rings. Nothing more." "Probably. Our lot has been through everything there. Maybe Sandy got the leftovers, and the rest went to those folks who helped Donnie escape back then. Tried to, at least, help. It's remarkable, really, how there's nothing left of the treasures, yet people continue to suffer because of them. It's true what they say. People die for metal," philosophically remarked Steve. A couple of weeks later, Veronica returned. Not alone, but with Andy. He had managed to propose to her. It turned out that he had nothing to do with the bandits. The rivals decided to scare him, so they hired 2 students who attacked Veronica in the city. At least, that's what Andy told her. Apparently, Veronica decided to believe her beloved man. They didn't come just for a visit. Veronica announced that she wanted a house in Griffith Town, and Andy wisely decided not to argue with his future wife, lest she run away again. They held the wedding in Griffith Town just a month later. Andy insisted they should hurry. Steve didn't leave Candace's side for a moment. He even invited her to a slow dance, surprising her with how well a policeman could dance. In the evening, Veronica and Andy left for the city. They were off on their honeymoon. Before parting, Veronica whispered to Candace, "Steve isn't so bad after all, is he?" "Yeah, not bad at all," Candace replied with a laugh. "So, dear friend, we'll be waiting